Hi, welcome to Steam Club Online video 4. Today I have Emma with me.
Hi guys.
And as always, I'm Matthew. And today we're going to be talking about non-Newtonian fluids. But first we need to understand what a Newtonian fluid is.
Yeah, so when we're talking about Newtonian fluids, we mean ones that follow Newton's law of viscosity. So Matthew, what is viscosity?
Viscosity is defined as a fluid's resistance to flow. So it's basically a fluid's resistance to deformation at a given rate, to be specific. So it basically means with a fluid's resistance to flowing, say if we're going to pour it. So we are actually going to help you understand that by doing that just now. So we're going to be using water and golden syrup. So first, Emma's going to pour a bit of water into that cup. There we go. And now I'm going to try and pour golden syrup into that cup. And as you can see, it reacted a lot differently. So the liquid flowed smoothly and the golden syrup was quite thick. And if you refer to our previous video about liquid density, you can actually see that the golden syrup and the water separate completely. They are very different in their densities. So we just had a quick pause, you see in the video, because we needed to clean up. So make sure you help your parents clean up with all of this stuff. It is only food products, but it can still get quite messy.
Yeah, so as we can see, the golden syrup has a higher viscosity than water, so to us we can just see it as being thicker.
Newton's law is not actually a law. It's an equation that we use to look at fluids and their viscosity independent of the strain rate. Now, what this means is thickness doesn't really change because it's flowing. So when you pour water, it doesn't get thicker or thinner because it's moving and flowing. And same really with a lot of other stuff. Some simple examples are blood. Blood's the same, and custard. Custard doesn't get thicker or thinner when it's poured. So that's Newton's law of viscosity.
So Newton's law of viscosity applies to most things, but there are some things that it doesn't apply to, and they're called non-Newtonian fluids. So today we're going to look at two non-Newtonian fluids.
The first non-Newtonian fluid we're going to look at is tomato sauce, and the property is shear thinning.
So shear thinning means that something becomes thinner when it's poured. So today's shear thinning liquid, as Matthew said before, is tomato sauce.
When we squeeze it out of the bottle, it moves freely and spreads out. But when we leave it alone for a minute, it changes and becomes thicker. It doesn't move as it did out of the bottle.
So as we had a look with the tomato sauce, we had the physical characteristics change. In this case, shear thinning. So what does this actually mean when we talk about physical characteristics changing with shear strain and stress? So I'm going to demonstrate using this box, this magical box just covered in paper. Don't worry about it. Alright, so I'm going to apply stress. I'm going to push straight down on this box. As you can see, it's crumbling, it's not super strong, but this is just applied stress. It's stress that forms, it's acting perpendicular to the surface of the box, in this case, straight down on the top. Right? But that's just normal stress. Shear stress is when force is applied parallel to the surface. So in this case, it's when I push like this and move it across. Now you see only some slight deformation here, because it takes a lot more force to move something like that. Well, it takes a lot more force for this cardboard box because it's actually quite strong when it's stuck together. That's the point of the box. But when it's pushed sideways using the force, the deformation rate is what is known as shear strain. So the amount that it has moved across because of the force is the shear strain on the object. Now, the shear stress applied to the sauce, called shear strain, and when this occurred, the liquid thinned. Hope you're following along so far. So basically we applied stress to it by pushing it out of the bottle. It got moved along and it deformed and thinned out as it was happening. Now, we're going to be looking at a different non-Newtonian fluid with the opposite effect. So we're going to be looking at a material called oobleck, which sounds really fancy in itself. It's water and cornstarch. And in this case today, food dye, because we want it easier to see. So now, cornstarch is not the same as corn flour. There is a difference. Corn flour is yellow, cornstarch is white. So if you try and use this with corn flour, it's not going to work. If you're in Australia, luckily for us, apparently we only have the one kind and we sell cornstarch as corn flour anyway. So you should be fine.
So here at the start, we can see small amounts of water and cornstarch are being mixed. It's a slow and time-consuming process, but the results are really fun. So once again, we added the food colouring in for just a little bit of flair and to make it a bit easier to see on the video. We've also sped up the mixing and pouring into the tray. As Matthew is moving his hands slowly and just lets his fingers sink into the oobleck, it is acting as a liquid. This is because of the slow movement and therefore lack of stress. This changes when Matthew tries to lift his hand out of the oobleck, and you can see the force resisting as the oobleck is acting as a solid. When his hands squeeze quickly, it is creating stress and hardening it. You can see the liquid dripping from his fingers as the stress is again removed. When you rub your hands together, you can see in the middle of the palms that it looks like how Play-Doh works. When you thrust your hand at the oobleck, it quickly changes to a solid as the stress changes and it provides resistance. If it is in the tub, you can see this more clearly yourselves. You can see the resistance change yourself when the fingers are pulled backwards. The oobleck looks like it's tearing from itself.
There we have it. This is some easy fun you can do at home with just regular household food ingredients. Now, as always, remember to help your parents clean up. We did have the protective equipment today, being our aprons, but this is all just food and food dye, so it's nothing you really need to worry about getting on your hands and things like that. Except for maybe the food dye, which took about 4 hours to get off my hand, but we're alright.
So thanks everyone for joining us for another STEAM Club online video.
And as always, for science!